I do, I don't. Equality campaigners hit out at the Scottish Government after ministers failed to come to a decision on the introduction of same-sex marriage. And to smack or not to smack your child, charities call for the practice to be outlawed. An essential step towards equality or a dangerous recipe for social disintegration. The prospect of legalised same-sex marriage arouses strong emotions. SNP ministers today delayed making a decision on the issue, but rebuffed Catholic Church demands for a referendum. Claire Stewart's report contains flash photography.
It gives me great pleasure on this historic day to pronounce you registered civil partners.
John and Lawrence were the first gay couple in Scotland to become civil partners. Back then, in 2005, it seemed like gay rights had come a long way.
25 years ago, we'd be locked up for even thinking about this, and look at us today. It's a huge change, a massive change.
The pair's civil partnership gained them the same rights as a married couple, but legally they couldn't actually tie the knot. However, Eric and Paolo did get married. They exchanged vows in Belgium. For them, a civil partnership just wasn't enough.
I respect people who have decided to have civil partnerships, and it's been on the basis that actually there was nothing else on offer, so I respect that, right? But for me personally, I would never have entered into a civil partnership because that's actually an acceptance of a lower status. It's almost worse than having nothing.
Eric and Paolo's marriage isn't recognised here in Scotland. However, that could be about to change. The Scottish Government are considering legalising same-sex marriage, and the latest opinion poll suggests the public support the move, with 64% of Scots in favour and only 26% opposed. That opposition is, however, both powerful and vocal. Cardinal Keith O'Brien has branded the gay marriage plans a grotesque subversion. The Church of Scotland and some other faith groups are also against it. The government's own consultation has seen a deluge of submissions with more than 80,000 responses. Compare that to the 26,000 received for the consultation on the independence referendum. Today, the Cabinet considered the results of the consultation and announced a decision on legislation will be made before the end of the month. They've ruled out a referendum on the issue as proposed by the Cardinal, but said MSPs will be given a free vote. The delay is, however, another frustration for gay rights campaigners who say they've waited long enough for equal rights in love.
Claire Stewart there. We're now joined by Tom French, Policy Coordinator of the Equality Network, and John Deighan, Parliamentary Officer of the Catholic Church in Scotland. Tom, you've hit out at this delay, but isn't it right they should consider this complex issue before rushing to a conclusion?
Absolutely. I think there should be a very thoughtful consideration of the evidence on this. Of course, it has been almost a year now since the consultation began. It's been 7 months since the Scottish Government consultation ended. And we do think that 7 months, with all the delays there have been, is probably long enough. I think people will be disappointed today, but they won't be disappointed because the Scottish Government haven't made their announcement on a particular day of the week. They will be disappointed because this is a really important issue. And what matters more than anything is we see some leadership from the Scottish Government. We see a commitment from them that they're dedicated to LGBT equality. And what we haven't seen so far throughout this whole debate is actually the positive case from the Scottish Government. Do they believe in equal marriage, and why do they want to introduce equal marriage? So we hope they will get that message out, and soon.
John, do you see an opportunity in this delay to press your case?
I think we've pressed the case. I think the implications are profound. I think the Scottish Government are probably aware of that, and I think the delay could mean that they're wakening up to the fact that they cannot give the assurances, they cannot ensure that the freedom of conscience is respected throughout society, they cannot ensure that Catholic organisations, Christian organisations, Muslim organisations are protected. So I think they have a tough challenge. I think they will have to recognise that they need Westminster to provide those assurances, and I really don't think they can proceed.
What's clear, though, is that there will be no referendum and the SNPs will get a free vote, so it is likely that it will go through.
Well, it won't go through if they don't commence that procedure, you know. And I think the opinion polls you've quoted, for example, are one side of the story. We've tried polls and we've consistently found that most people want to keep marriage defined as between a man and a woman. I think the government will be aware of that. I don't think that support is broadly there in society to change it as presented. If it were what we've been told by Tom and others, such wide support, I think they would have been happy to have a referendum. I think the fact that they're running away from that suggests that they know most of society would be happy to keep marriage as it is.
Were you running away from a referendum?
Well, look, you know, I was involved in setting up the Equal Marriage campaign with the Equality Network back in 2008. And I think it's really important to say that we set up the campaign because we wanted a positive change. We didn't set up the Equal Marriage campaign because we wanted to have an argument with John or a tit for tat, or because we wanted to force the Catholic Church or any other body to do something that they don't want to do. You know, for us this is about equality and freedom. We're not running away from a referendum. I don't think it's actually the right way to deal with these issues. That's why referendums are only used for major constitutional issues of change. Something like this, with 77,000 responses to the Scottish Government consultation, requires MSPs to sit, look through the detailed evidence, look at both sides of the argument, and hopefully make a really thoughtful conclusion on that.
John, the majority of people appear to want this, a man to be able to marry a man, a woman to be able to marry a woman. It's just some religious groups that appear to be against it.
Well, that's not the case. I mean, the polling we did recently, so the most recent poll found that 55% of people want to keep marriage to be between a man and a woman. 38% were in favour of changing it. That's the polling you find if you ask subjective questions. 77,000 responses have gone into the consultation. That's the biggest poll that anyone has done. And what we're hearing is that 2/3 of those were opposed to any change. So I think the populace are in favour of protecting marriage. But I think the deeper thing, Tom is right that we have to consider both sides of the argument, and what we're not considering is the implications this will have in freedoms.
Isn't it an issue of equality and fairness though, John?
Yeah, absolutely. So we need fairness for people who want to protect their conscience, protect their organisations, to be able to hold their own values. We warned at the time when they were changing adoption laws that the quality framework would not allow Catholic adoption agencies to continue. We were told at the time that that was scaremongering, and as soon as that bill was passed, we found that Catholic adoption agencies across the UK were closed down. It's the same law that will apply here, and that's why it's so dangerous. And I think that, Tom, you need to concede that that is the case.
Look, we appreciate John's concerns, and that's why we have said throughout this we don't want to require any religious body to do it that doesn't want to do it. I think it's right that bodies like the Unitarians and the Quakers who want to conduct same-sex marriage are allowed to. If there needs to be some kind of small amendment to the Equality Act to make it absolutely clear that no religious body should be required to do this, we're happy for that to be the case.
Is that not enough of an assurance for you, John? What bothers you?
Tom, you are sidestepping the issue. The issue is not just what we do within the four walls of a church, it's about what people in society do. If you work for the public sector, you will be required to promote equality as it's understood by the state. So as soon as the state says that marriage is between two men, it's just the same as between a man and a woman, as soon as they say that, you are under a duty to promote that. Now that means that Catholics, Muslims, other Christians and people of no faith who think that marriage is between a man and a woman, they will be forced to uphold that in their work, or their jobs will be at stake.
John, what you do in your church is up to you, but I believe, like the National Association for the Advancement of Coloured People, one of the major civil rights organisations in the United States, said, this is the civil rights issue of this generation. And I believe that equality under the law is a really key value, and that's what we're asking for.
But do you not have equality under the law? Because the rights of a civil partnership are the same as a marriage. Marriage is defined as a union between a man and a woman. Gay rights are not being abused.
I think what we got with civil partnerships was some of the same legal rights, but we didn't get practical equality. And the Equality Network said at the time, look, this is a step we'll support because we see it as a step forward, but actually civil partnerships is not equality. Creating a separate institution, especially for gay people, is not equality by its very definition. What we want is equal marriage. It's not about forcing people, but it's about freedom of choice, and it's about equality.
I think you're starting to reveal the nub of the problem, because what Tom is saying is that people who disagree with his understanding of human relationships are bigots. That's the parallel that they've consistently done. He's comparing us with racists. So what you want, Tom, is everyone in society is free to accept your understanding of human sexuality, but if they have a Christian or a traditional understanding of it, so it's not just Christians, throughout history, across cultures, if you have that understanding, it's unacceptable.
Tom, very briefly.
It's about the positive case for equality, and we hope that the Scottish Government will think carefully and send out a strong message to society that it believes in equality and is willing to stand up for it.
Tom, John, thanks very much indeed for
Thank
joining
you.
us. Well, to analyse where we now found ourselves in this contentious debate, we're joined from Edinburgh by Radio 4 and Radio Clyde's political editor, Colin Mackay. Colin, thanks for joining us this evening. The government's come under attack today for this delay. The opposition's accused them of weak leadership. Fair comment?
I'm not convinced that it's weak leadership. I think we had expected a decision today, and a lot of people are going to be disappointed by that, but by the fact that we don't actually have a final decision. But my understanding is that the Cabinet today agreed in principle that they would back same-sex marriages, and that by the end of the month we will actually know that. The Deputy First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, after she has led this subcommittee review, will actually tell us that. But what she's trying to do is reassure someone like John Deighan and some of the comments that he was making earlier on in terms of their opt-out for gay marriages, so they don't have to carry them out in Catholic churches and other churches as well if they don't want to. But more importantly, to some degree, that they won't be forced to promote this, for example, in Catholic schools.
I suppose the problem for the government is that they can't please everyone.
You can't please all the people all the time, but on this one, they're going to disappoint an awful lot of people when they actually come out and tell us their decision. And I think, I don't think they're just trying to delay that. I think they're actually trying to get it right. And that's why this Cabinet subcommittee with Nicola Sturgeon, the Education Secretary, the Justice Secretary and the Lord Advocate are trying to deal with the legal side of this to make sure that this isn't open to legal challenge. And also to address another of John's points, they're also in talks at the moment with Westminster officials to make sure there's no avenue there for legal challenge.
There seems to be a lot of support for the same-sex marriage. Is that a sign of how much our society has changed over the past decade, given the controversy there was about the abolition of Section 28?
I think these are two different but related subjects. I think we have moved on a lot since Section 28. I think politically in the Parliament we've moved on. I mean, that was just about a year after the start of the Parliament, and you had fairly significant opposition. You had the Tories who unanimously voted against the repeal of Section 28. You're not going to get that because they've changed as a party. I think things have changed quite a lot, and I think we're going to see that in the fact that there will be very little opposition within the Parliament to this.
Has the power of the church lessened over time, do you think?
I think that remains to be seen. I think the church still has a bit of clout, a fair bit of influence, particularly on this kind of matter. I think they have influence over individual MSPs. I think they have influence over individual ministers. And I think, that is being brought to bear. That's why the government are so keen to try and get these legal problems ironed out.
Colin Mackay, thanks for joining us on Scotland Tonight.